Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming here today. I have with us Mark Silver. I encountered Mark's work a couple of years ago when I was doing a program called Art of Money with Barry Tussler. It's really about finding the right relationship with money. And in the course of going through her materials, Mark was one of the guest presenters in there, and they had this phenomenal interview together. And it was through Mark that I learned about this wonderful framework and approach to pricing called resonant pricing. It was so refreshing to hear someone who brings so much heart and the depth of spirituality and authenticity to how we approach our businesses in a more whole and embodied way. And gosh, it's just kind of a gem when you encounter, and not to dehumanize it, a gem in just a wonderful, vibrant, conscious way when you find somebody who is sharing this, what I view as sacred work with the world. So Mark's just recently wrote a book. We're excited to talk about that a little bit here today. And he's been doing this for more than a couple decades, helping heart-oriented entrepreneurs live more fulfilled lives and run more fulfilling businesses. So Mark, thank you so much for taking the time. Maybe we can just start off by, maybe you can fill in the gaps of what you would like to be known for with this audience here today. And if there's something that's really alive for you right now and today and in this moment that you'd like to share, maybe something you'd like to celebrate, we would love to celebrate that with you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm really just delighted to be invited in and share this space with you. So thank you. Yeah, I'm just kind of celebrating summer. One of the things we have a garden. We love to can food, and I've put up, like 3 dozen quarts of pickles from cucumbers from our garden, and more than a year's worth of jam. And I'm really celebrating that, as well as my book coming out in October. But it feels really good. And yeah, and I'm delighted because, holistic healing, in our family, we deal with chronic illness and disability. We live with that. My wife has walked with that for a long time. And Western medicine has very little to say to her conditions. And so holistic healing, alternative, has formed the majority of our healthcare. And I was a paramedic, years and years ago in the San Francisco Bay Area in the 911 system. And I just, and so I'm familiar with Western medicine. And so I just have such a deep respect and desire to see holistic practitioners do really well, because people need the help. People need the help.
Yeah, man. And I know you've helped probably hundreds of integrative and holistic healers, practitioners, clinicians over the years. What are some of the patterns that you see in this profession, as far as, maybe where there's strengths, always nice to orient to that, and maybe where there's rooms for development within the context of running a successful clinic or business?
Yeah. So one of the things that's always delightful to see in a skilled practitioner, even new practitioners are often really skilled at listening, and just being present, which is such an important business skill. It's important in marketing, it's important in sales, it's important in being present with your business and setting up systems and all like that. That listening and awareness is such an important part. In fact, it took me a while to realize why I was good at sales was because I was really good at doing medical assessments from being a paramedic, from being able to listen through the chaos and be present with someone when they're struggling with something. And so that's just a really deep, profound gift that's deeply needed and a really critical skill in business. Where I see people trip up is, anyone who is a professional that has a particular modality or particular thing that they do, we have specialized language, to communicate complex things within our profession and to other professionals. The challenge is that it can be really hard to let go of that language when communicating in a marketing context. People people tend to think, oh, people say, well, what do you do? Or they want to know, they don't, potential clients don't ask the questions we think they're asking or that they're articulating. They're asking different questions. And so many practitioners end up explaining literally what they do in language that would be suited for someone interested in becoming a practitioner, but not helpful to someone who just wants to have enough trust and awareness to be able to step into getting, receiving care. And so it's a pretty big shift from practitioner mindset to client, to seeing things from the client's point of view. And that's one of the places I see people really
This,
get caught.
yeah, it's so huge. And really, I think part of this is really understanding the people we're helping from the inside out, knowing how they think, knowing how the frameworks that they use in making decisions and relating to things. My guess is having that level of insight about understanding where somebody is in their own level of understanding, might that help them become a better clinician even?
I think so. For me, there's not, like, marketing is not a thing that's separate from actually providing the service. Like, it's not a separate thing. It's the same thing. It's like, consent, of course, is huge in human relations, and especially in working with a client of any kind or a patient of any kind. You need consent to treat or consent to care. And when someone isn't yet a client, isn't yet a patient, you're still wanting to provide a care, but providing it at the level of consent that there is, which may be at the level of receiving a newsletter, or the level of, like, watching a video, or like reading an article, or social media post, or or having a conversation. And so being aware of that level of consent, the marketing is really just providing the care. It's a little simplistic to say it that way, but that's really at the essence of what it is. Like, let me put it this way. Marketing is not about attraction. It's not about attraction. Attraction is the province of love. When we are full of a deep humility and care and desire to be of service, and we care about the people that we want to help and the people that we see struggling, suffering in the world in different ways, and we want to help them, that comes from a place of love. And that's the essence of attraction. People feel that. However, we've all had experiences that make us not trust attraction, right? Are you going to break my heart? Are you really who you say you are? Are you, is this really going to work? And so people are needing safety. So marketing's true role, true job, is to communicate safety, not to try to pull people in, but to communicate safety. And we do a lot of creating safety by empathizing, by witnessing, and by providing small, bite-sized, consensual levels of help to help people be able to taste what it is that we're giving, so that they can feel trust, so that they can feel safety. And it's really, it can be really powerful. We have had hundreds, thousands of clients really over the last 23 years that we've been doing this. A lot of our people are holistic practitioners of one sort or another. And often what they're doing, what people are doing, what our clients are doing, is they're providing teachings, right? Or advice, or, how-tos in the form of videos or audios or written material or what have you. And but they're doing it by starting out from a deep place of witnessing and caring. Gosh, it's really hard when the seasons change and you're just raring to like step into the new thing, but then you get sick, or you have cancer and you're scared because there's all this conflicting advice and the decisions are really important. It's like you can bring a sense of empathy and care for the struggles without treating someone as if they're broken, without manipulating someone by talking about the pain, you
Mm.
know. But it can be done really beautifully so that someone can feel a sense of healing just from the marketing.
Yeah, and I love that we're talking about this beautiful way of marketing and presenting our message. And I know we talked about this. I recently had an interview with Tad Hargrave, and this was a major theme throughout that interview as well. But we were noting in that there's just not a lot of examples of people doing that really elegantly and skillfully. So I'm curious, where does somebody who doesn't even have an orientation to know that it can be done elegantly
Wow.
and skillfully? I mean, I think from your audience, like a lot of these folks feel that marketing is a form of selling your soul, and there's not a way to do it that's not slimy. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So the first thing we have to do when we approach marketing and sales, knowing that they're separate things,
mhm,
is that we have to slow down. We have to slow down. One of the most underestimated things in business is the amount of time it takes for someone to make a significant purchasing decision, and deciding to invest time and money and energy into some getting healing from someone is really significant.
mm,
And if we lose the idea that somehow our marketing is supposed to immediately convert a stranger into a paying client or patient, that takes a lot of the slime out, because that's the same kind of energy as going into a bar and trying to pick somebody up for a one night stand. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Obviously it happens. Sometimes it could be fun if both people are consenting, but you know, it's that's not how I'm in a I'm in a long-term relationship. That's not how I do things, right? It's like, and so I just, if we take that pressure off, then it gives space. So for instance, let me tell the story. I have a former client who was a Feldenkrais practitioner, and what they were able to do was they were able to, and there's various steps to this. We're broad strokes, cutting to the chase. We're able to establish a relationship with a bicycling organization, proponents of of biking, and in a city, and there was like a bike to work day, and every year they have, they do this, and there's a lot of people who participate, and people who have never biked to work sometimes end up injuring themselves just because they haven't biked. I mean, not in a crash, but just like, oh, they're not used to that movement. And so they had she had asked, and she created some videos that said, here's some proper body mechanics if you're getting on a bicycle and you haven't bicycled 3 or 4 or 5 or 8 miles, in a long time. And she made these short videos, and they sent them out to their membership, and they had breadcrumb trails back to her own email list, her own website, to find out more. And she ended up with more subscribers, and some of those people then took in more of her content like that, and eventually became clients, because she wasn't trying to sell people immediately. There was safety, right? It's like, oh, I'll try out what she's saying, and then, wow, it worked. Oh, that does feel better. Oh, let me check her out. And they end up on her list, and then you get a little bit more information, and then there's an invitation. Hey, let's have a free conversation in case you're, like, there's this willingness to give people space, to trust them as adults, to trust that they will make the decision that they are going to make, and that you don't need to push people along And that takes all the slime out of it, and the conversations that she had and other people who've done very similar things have had, these tend to be really beautiful, open-hearted conversations with people who already have trust in the practitioner.
Mm.
And it's all coming from a place of care and love, right? The videos that she created originally were about not treating in a medical sense, right? Not in a you're in my officially, but it was about providing help. It wasn't about selling.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. As I hear you kind of give this wonderful case example, there's two things there in terms of her really demonstrating her care for her people, which is, she has a certain tone in how she's presenting her message to these folks that maybe create safety. But you mentioned the breadcrumbs. There's this infrastructure component to that really,
Yes.
and maybe that's the piece that gets overlooked. Or what do you have to say about like really having the structure and the tone?
The structure is so important. So one of the things that I talk about spiritually as a Sufi teacher, from a Sufi perspective, um, is that we don't want to privilege the inner over the outer or the outer over the inner. Like they're all divine, they're all sacred, right? And I think about it, I was mentioning gardening before, growing tomatoes. Um, yes, you want to bring love to the tomatoes, but you also want to make sure that you've got the right soil. And you also want to make sure that they're watered appropriately. And guess what? Tomatoes need cages. They need a structure to hold them up. Um, a funny thing about a lot of businesses is that when they don't have the marketing structures in place, their experience is that people show up and they either become clients or they don't. And so they have this misunderstanding that most clients, most patients convert immediately. And the truth is that a robust business that's in momentum, that has what I call the 3 journeys of marketing in place, it's only a very tiny percentage of people that convert that quickly.
Mm.
It's only a very tiny percentage. And most people, like most of the clients that we have, they're on our list, or they're in our orbit or in our audience for days, weeks, months, years sometimes. And then the timing is right and they step into an offering. And uh, it's much more normal. And I want to tell one quick funny story about this because I was trained with my Sufi teachers, and then I became faculty in the teacher internship program within the healing school. And we were talking about business development because these are teachers who want to go out and have practices, healing and teaching practice, spiritual practices. And they were all saying like, but this is spiritual work. Like we all like just jumped in a moment, our hearts opened and we stepped into this school or stepped into this path in a moment. And I said, oh yeah, let's investigate this a little bit. And I questioned not everyone in the room, but a bunch of people in the room. I said, okay, so let's talk about it. What was going on? Every single person there detailed months or years of other kinds of either spiritual experiences or life experiences that prepared them to be ready to step in. And none of them had, like, sure, the choice happened in a moment, but the preparation to be ready for that choice took time. And that can happen in a happenstance sort of way, just as people kind of move through life and then they happen to cross your business at the moment that they're ready, which is fine. Some people do that and it's beautiful. But if you have the care and the structure, the tomato cage, so to speak, that supports and gives to people in a sustainable way, then people can hang out in your presence without feeling any pressure, without you know feeling pushed. And then when they're ready, they're in your audience instead of having bounced off and then going, gosh, I'm kind of ready. I can't remember that person's name anymore. Oh, here's somebody else. I'm just going to step in here, which is fine. It's great that they get the help, right? We're not saying that they're not getting the help, but I'm saying that you can intentionally create these structures so that people that really resonate with who you are and how you do things can stick around and become your patient, your client when it's time.
Yeah, I think the structures piece is, just my observation with people who are running clinics, a lot of times they're based on word of mouth and referrals, and they don't
Mhm.
have these structures in place. And maybe I think it's a little bit of mindset shift that our profession, our industry could benefit from in terms of really recognizing that these structures for our marketing are part of the medicine that we provide.
Yes.
How do you explain that? How do you digest that concept with your folks?
Yeah. I love how you say that because I think it is absolutely part of the care that we bring to the world, you know? So I think the first thing is that I like to break marketing down into three journeys of marketing, because one of the things that makes marketing hard to approach, and and it should be said just as a side note that marketing is just one aspect of a healthy business, right? There's a lot of other aspects, but here we are, we'll talk about marketing. Um, there is like what I call the first journey of marketing is what we call is marketing to strangers. It's like, how do you show up in front of new people? And then the second journey is, how do you sustainably continue to give to an audience that is interested but isn't ready to buy, or maybe they purchased but they're, maybe they can come back. And the third journey is, how do you support both raving fans who are clients and also colleagues in a larger network to send referrals, to send people into your first and second journeys of marketing. And the sales, the purchase, the decision to step in to a deeper relationship with your work and your medicine happens in most commonly in that second journey. And if you think about these in different ways, then you know that it's, like I relate differently to somebody that I just meet at a coffee shop. I talk to them differently than I would like a close, intimate friend or my wife or my kids. Like it's a different way of relating because it honors the relationship, the truth of the relationship. And so by having that structure broken down, it helps keep it consensual. It helps keep it appropriate. The first journey marketing is all about like, oh, how do I get the help to the people in a way that is both interesting and helpful, but I'm not trying to sell them immediately. I'm just trying to create enough safety and awareness and experience that they may step in, like my clients' first videos that organization put out, right? It was just like, here's how to do this, and if you're interested to know more about this kind of approach, you can find me over here, but it's not like you need to sign up for sessions right now, kind of energy. There's that energy just totally absent. And but then the second journey is like, oh, you're in our audience. Like if you're, and so it's kind of like a sustainable way to continue to give. We have a weekly newsletter, goes out Wednesdays. Doesn't have to be weekly. People do things monthly. People do things twice a month. There's different, people do social media posts. There's different ways of showing up consistently. Another way of showing up consistently is having a brick and mortar business that's in a high trafficked place and people walk by you 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and there's things in the window that make it useful. There was a bicycle mechanic in our neighborhood when we used to live in Portland, Oregon. Um, and there was no email list there, and this was years and years ago, but they posted, flyers around the neighborhood, but they were interesting. It wasn't just like bike mechanic. They were almost like little comics. And it was and I'm like, oh, I'd look for the next one. I'd look for the next one. Like there was like a creativity and a care and an interest and then I felt like I got to know this person. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna call this person, Um, it was a relational piece there. And so and then like, of course, we all depend on word of mouth. We all depend on people's good opinion of us to send appropriate people. But there's a structure there too. Like there's an appropriate structure that you can do to support word of mouth, to support referrals. You can tell people who to refer. You can get really clear about that, so they're clear, and it's not just like, oh, they're so great, you should go see them, but it's like, oh, they help these particular kinds of people with this particular kind of thing. And you're not saying like, go pick up the phone and make an appointment. You're saying, gosh, they've got this video, you should see it, or they've got this great newsletter, or they're really interesting. It's like, you should check them out and see if they resonate with you. And this way of recommending that, again, it's about safety. It's about allowing people to check things out from a distance. It's allowing people to build up their own relationship with you and trusting that adults will step forward when they need the help.
Right on. And I know you talk a lot about this in your book, The Three Journeys of Marketing, just to kind of like summarize, what I'm understanding of this. And basically this first phase is sort of a phase of or journey of outreach. The second one is maybe a journey of nurture. And the third journey is that really about not just nurturing folks who are in our audience, but nurturing folks who've experienced and have a deep understanding of our work that they can advocate for us.
Yeah, but they don't even have to have a deep understanding. Like they don't have to be fellow practitioners or, sister practitioners or have that kind of insight, right? They just, this is the thing about, this is where I wish I could download like 2 years of like business curriculum, because it's like, there's all these different pieces. You don't need all the pieces immediately, but each piece you add in, it gets a little bit easier and better. So when I talk about a business, the way I define a business is not by what you do, acupuncture, Reiki, Feldenkrais, massage, naturopathy. That's not the business. The business is defined by who do you help and what do you help them with, right? Because, I grew up in retail. My parents ran a wine store that had been my grandfather's. He had been a pharmacist during Prohibition here in the United States in the 1930s and sold alcohol by prescription. And when I was over, started a wine store. Anyway, I grew up in that. When a new wine came out, my parents didn't open a new store. They just put it on the shelf. People, your skill is a bottle on a shelf, so to speak. It's a modality, and we're always expanding and deepening and widening our modality. If that was the business, that's not what the business is. The business, relationally focused, is, I've been talking to one of my clients. She helps, spiritually oriented women who have been having trouble conceiving and want to really step into motherhood. It's like, it's not defined by how she does it. It's defined by who she's helping. And it doesn't always have to be problem focused. Like there was a naturopath who was like, intending to be I'm the doctor for families who care about holistic health, who live in a certain neighborhood, right? It was geographically focused. It was like, I help these people, in this way, when you define your business like that, then other people know who to refer you to, right? It's really hard to say, gosh, I'm on the, oh, I found somebody who needs acupuncture. Oh, yeah. No, I found somebody who has back pain, or somebody who has chronic illness, or somebody who has, and so when you define it like that, then it becomes possible to then educate people on who to refer to you. And it happens much more easily and much more consistently from that perspective.
Yeah, it's we're getting into this this really deep subject of how we position ourselves, how we niche, or niche, however you want to pronounce that. And that itself, from my own experience, it's taken me more than 2 years to get really clear on who I'm serving and how I'm serving them. Which as a business coach, it can be a whole number of things, right? And it may serve them in a number of other things, number of other ways. For a holistic or integrative practitioner who's maybe just starting their business or thinking about starting their business, and perhaps they're not sure exactly where they want to
Right.
play or position that,
Right.
what advice do you have for these folks?
I um I first of all have a lot of empathy. Like, what I say is, like, you're not getting married. Like, you don't have to pick your forever what so the thing that I hear from our clients over the years, over and over again, is saying, gosh, I can't believe, like, I resisted niching and identifying an audience for so long. I wish I had decided earlier because it makes everything easier. I think that there is a surrender that's needed. Like, I can't help everybody. And even I can't help everybody. And if I could help everybody, I wouldn't have the capacity. Like, it just, like, how many people, like, if your practice is really busy, how many people? 30, 50, 100, even 5, even 1,000. I mean, you can find 20,000 people in a square half mile in a city. It's like there's so many people. And so when you surrender to that and you know that it's okay to have some focus, and by the way, focus doesn't mean smaller, it just means clearer, right? It doesn't mean niche, doesn't mean small. It's like people are like, is that small enough? It's like, it's not about small, it's about clear. Can people hear who you help and raise their hand and go, oh, that's me, or I know who you're talking about. I know somebody like that. I know Mary should talk to you. But I say, you know what? If you can get close, if you can, like, guess, like, who are the people that would be interesting to help, that you feel like are in your heart, can you pick them and just stick with it for 6 months to a year, knowing that you can change it, and allow yourself to learn the marketing structures, to get some traction, to play with that. And then you'll be able to either change it or um, deepen it or widen it or tweak it or whatever. But can you pick it enough to, it's like, I think a lot of people say, gosh, I need to discover who my niche is. And what I always like to say is that it's worthwhile wrestling with, because it makes everything in business easier. But it's also a lot lighter of a decision. Your niche is not about the magic you bring. It's not even necessarily a calling, although for some people it is, depending. It's really just deciding. And in making that decision, knowing that you can make another decision later, you take some of the struggle out of it. And again, it's like, it's one of these kind of curious things where, yes, it's worth doing some wrestling around. It's worth taking some weeks of contemplation. It's worth getting a little bit of help to kind of ping around with it and get, some guidance on, like, how to think about it. But it's not worth struggling with for months or years. If you find yourself, if you find it's going on and on and on, like, make a choice. It's kind of like picking a path in the forest. Well, pick a path and start walking it. And if you don't like it, then you can backtrack and go to the other path. But when you can't see that far down the road, trying to guess where you're going to end up ahead of time, it's just not worth it. Sometimes you just have to take the step and discover it as you walk.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it takes a little bit of courage. And you mentioned the word surrender also. And, this might seem like a jump, but I feel like there's a connection here. So I know that you've studied trauma to some extent. Of course, you're a paramedic, so you've seen trauma very close. And, sometimes it's not so apparent for folks, why being trauma informed and trauma literate
Mm-hmm.
really help us as businesses and owners to run more successful business, but also in order to, again, create this safety for our folks. I'm wondering how being trauma literate what's your take on this? How does this help you as a business owner, helping others, and how might clinicians or small clinic owners benefit from being trauma informed?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up. Um, it's kind of similar to being DEI informed, aware of white supremacy and aware of sexism, and homophobia and some of these other issues as well. Because when you are aware of trauma, when you're aware of these issues, first of all, it makes it less likely that you're going to harm other people accidentally without meaning to. The same way you can step on somebody's foot if you didn't see it. It's like you can activate, and it's not like you can, people have triggers, trauma triggers, and you can't, if you can't totally avoid them, but you can be aware of them, and you can be aware of where there might likely be ones. And you can also recognize the beginnings of somebody else's, like a dissociative state or a reaction that somebody's having, and be able to back off and be a lot more gentle. You also, by being informed, because I am not a trauma healer, like we have people in our clients of ours and people on our team who are trained in somatic experiencing or other kinds of trauma healing, really important things. I'm not trained like that. I've received that kind of healing, but and so where your limits are, and when you need to bring in other help. I mean, it's remarkable. Like for me as a spiritual teacher, it's especially important because there are certain kinds of trauma responses that spiritual practice won't touch. Like you can just be, whatever kind of spiritual healing I'm doing, if somebody's in a trauma response, they're dissociated. Like they need some kind of somatic based healing work, which I can then recommend. I can recognize the symptoms, and I can recommend and refer someone to get the help they need. So I think it's, especially in a culture like ours that is so riddled with trauma. Everyone in this culture has some level of trauma, and some people have extraordinary levels of trauma. And I don't think it's possible as a business owner or especially as a health practitioner of some sort, to really navigate without having some trauma awareness, because sooner or later you're going to step in it, and it's going to impact people, including your business. Yeah, there's a lot
Yeah,
there.
I appreciate that. There's this kind of trauma has all these connotations associated with it. But if we look at it as a spectrum from anywhere from stress to overwhelm to just like shock, trauma, or just long-term ongoing chronic stress, something like that, being literate on that spectrum even is part of this. And there's a tending of others, but I'm also seeing an entrepreneur, being an entrepreneur is really a journey of self-development. And I think, helping clients in their own development in their business often brings self-development. So there's this piece. And there's also, as clinicians are helping their patients or their clients with their self-development.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, when somebody is stifled or stuck in their development, they fall away, or that, they're not going to schedule their next appointment. How does being informed on this spectrum help to navigate these relationships?
I'm pausing because, well, first of all, being informed about this means that we can pause and bring a lot of care. A lot of care. It's very easy for a practitioner or a business owner, wherever start. This is, in the business development, business coaching industry, there's a lot of really unethical practices. And it's a frequent and recurring conversation
Hmm.
about how so many business coaches interpret or label someone's lack of desire to follow through with that particular coach as a lack of commitment to their business, and that's like obviously way unethical, like, and wrong and dangerous. But the same is true for everything, right? Like if you're not, if you have a trusting relationship, if you're like, if there's someone who's a trained trauma healer and they have a trusting relationship with their client and they know them well, then there's going to be a possibility to be able to help that client discern for themselves, oh, am I backing away because, would I really need to work with this, right? But if we're not in that situation, if someone is backing away, they get to back away. They get to back away, whatever the reason. We may have opinions about, like, gosh, if they would just stick with it, they would heal. You know what? It's their body, it's their path. Maybe their nervous system needs a break. Maybe they can't or shouldn't heal that fast because they're going to get into something that is going to be very difficult or sticky to unwind. Maybe there's some kind of intuitive sense that you're not the practitioner for them for the next stage. Maybe it's unconscious. Maybe it's just that they just don't feel like doing it right now. Maybe there's a lot, like, we don't get to decide that for others. But having the trauma informed perspective and literacy of that means that we can bring an extra level of compassion and understanding that when a patient or a client backs away, that we can, that it can help our understanding, and we can perhaps say, gosh, I get that you're backing away. I totally respect it. Is there some other resource I can help you access? Are you just needing a break, or am I not the right person? Or do you need something else that I can help you find?
Right. Yeah. Even just being able to really respect the autonomy of our folks is perhaps part of the healing for these folks. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. For somebody to be, you mentioned a lot of different reasons that trauma happens, but another reason trauma happens is abuse, right? People being treated in horrible ways. And for someone to assert their own sovereignty and make their own choices can absolutely be part of the healing, a critical part of the healing for them, whether it's conscious or not. And so as the practitioner, we don't get to second guess the client in that way, and I'm speaking now as someone who's trained as a spiritual healer. I have my master's of divinity. I've had 3 in-depth years of training. I've 2 years of spiritual teacher training, and then 1.5 years of my master's of divinity training in ministry. There's like a lot here as a spiritual practitioner and healer. Like, we have to respect the autonomy and sovereignty of our clients.
Beautiful. And I love that you brought this up, your deep spiritual background that you bring to your business. I'm curious to hear your views. I think this is going to be our last question. And I'd love to, if you can hold up your book for us before you go, I would love to see what that looks like.
I'm very happy about the way it looks too.
Yeah, so beautiful. And I've been able to listen through about 40% of it so far. And it's just, this is a wonderful work, and it's a beautiful view into the entire body of the decades of work that Mark's put together over the years. So I definitely recommend this. When is this released, Mark?
If all the supply chains work, October 2nd, 2023 is when we're expecting it to be released. And I'm working with the publisher now to set up the pre-order and
Beautiful.
all of that. So
yeah. So in this book, Mark goes deeper into these 3 journeys of marketing. He's got like the various 4 phases of business development. There's wonderful frameworks in here that can help us really self-assess and self-diagnose where we're at in our business and realize, hey, this isn't broken. This is just a phase of development. right? So, Mark, this has been amazing. And speaking of development, maybe we can close on this. We both see business as a vehicle for self-development, self-betterment, self-actualization. How do you explain that? How do you relate to your business as a vehicle for personal growth and self-actualization?
How do you not?
Yeah, right. Well, how about
You
you
know,
explain that to
I
somebody who
mean,
doesn't know anything about
right,
that
right.
view,
Well,
right?
I'm, there's so much dysfunction in the world of business. Capitalism sucks. And the last few hundred years since the birth of capitalism, modern capitalism, and how much dysfunction it's wreaked upon us collectively, means that the ways that we have of doing business, or the ways that we've been shown how to do business, I should say, are incredibly dysfunctional and traumatizing and traumatic, speaking of trauma. And so approaching doing business, especially with sacred work, usually each thing in business is going to have emotional content. Sales, like we talked about it, sales, marketing, emotional content, systems, emotional content, having a team, emotional, there's all of this stuff that's come up. We don't have to go looking for it. And so as we move through, what I like to encourage myself to do, as well as our clients to do, is again, to not rush through and to slow down. It's a case of slowing down to move faster,
Mhm.
because by slowing down, we get to do the healing work that makes everything much easier. And we also get to find the love that's present that has maybe been veiled or distorted by the culture. Find ways that, yeah, there is love present in the sales conversation. There is love present in systems, even in invoicing systems. There's love present and can be. We say that every act of business can be an act of love. And I think that coming into a sense of wholeness, both individually and collectively, means finding the love in everything. And
Mm.
this includes in all aspects of business.
Mm. Love that. Business can be an act of love. And I think love is medicine, right? So maybe we can say that this is part of our medicine as healers, as clinicians, as business owners here in our communities. So, Mark, thank you so much. Really appreciate this. This has been beautiful having this conversation with you. I hope this was valuable for you all here who've joined us here today. Mark, would you like to put a link in chat of how folks can find your work if they're interested in taking a peek?
Yeah. If I don't get any typos, my laptop keyboard has been doubling characters for some reason, but
Okay.
let me just drop it in there.
Is it
Yeah,
heartofbusiness.com?
there it is. I got it.
Beautiful.
We'll have a dedicated website for the book up shortly, but if just like I was talking about earlier, I may talk a good game, but who knows if I'm really like real until, so sign up for our newsletter and watch for a while, kind of like get a sense of the work. And if we can help you, we'd be delighted to. So.